Childless for 3 years, I journeyed to the sacred mountain temple to pray for a son. On the road back to the marquisate, I found an infant abandoned on a barren hillside, and brought him back to the estate to raise. For over 20 years, I treated him as my own flesh and blood, pouring all my efforts into nurturing his talents. But the day he achieved fame and success was the day I lay wasting away on my sick. Only at death's door did I learn the truth. The child I had found was the son of my husband and his mistress. I died with a sea of resentment in my heart. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day I went to the temple to pray for a child. On the way home, I heard the same familiar cry of an infant. This time I furiously ordered my maid to send the baby to a male brothel. You love having others raise your children, don't you? Then let the madam of a brothel teach him how to properly serve men. In my previous life, I had been married to Alistair for 3 years without bearing a child. My sister, the Empress, sent the royal physician to examine us, but he found us both healthy. It seemed my barrenness was a matter of fate, so I often went to the sacred mountain temple in the west of the city to pray for a child. One day, on the return journey, I heard the loud wails of a baby coming from a thicket. I had my maid, Bria, bring the infant into the carriage. The baby's swaddling clothes were tattered, and tucked inside was a letter written in blood, stating that the family was too poor to care for the child and hoped a kind person would take him in. My heart ached with pity. I brought the child back to the Marquise's estate, intending to raise him until he was old enough to seek out his biological parents. Alistair was incredibly supportive. He named the boy Julian and declared that childbirth was a great hardship for women. Perhaps this child was a gift from the heavens to spare me that suffering. 15 years later, Julian had grown into a handsome young man, gentle, polite, and impeccably graceful. I felt the time was right and told him of his origins. I let him choose, find his birth parents or be officially adopted into the Alistair family line, becoming our legitimate son. Julian chose the latter and became my son. From then on, I spared no effort, leveraging the influence of my sister, the Empress, and my father's connections. I propelled Julian to success. By the age of 25, he had been appointed to the high-ranking position of Junior Minister of Revenue. Seeing my son so accomplished, my weary heart could finally rest. I was about to send out invitations to my old friends for an outing, when I fell ill at first. I thought it a minor ailment, but my body grew weaker by the day. Within half a month, I was confined to my bed. Bria anxiously tried to summon the royal physician from the palace, but Alistair stopped her. Our son has just been appointed junior minister. The family should not draw attention by summoning the royal physician. The doctor from the Spring Blossom Clinic is also a renowned healer. He will suffice. Delirious with fever, I could only nod in agreement, but Bria sensed something was wrong. Using the token my sister had given me, she slipped out of the estate through a doggy door at night, intending to go to the palace for help. But she never returned. It was then I realized there was something wrong with the man who shared my bed. But it was too late. I no longer had the strength to even speak. I could only watch as Alistair brought his mistress before me, her face glowing with triumph. "Ilara," he sneered, "you used your status as the Empress's sister to force me to marry you, keeping me from my dear Clara. And your insufferable old father, constantly interfering in my career, suppressing me at every turn. You brought this upon yourself." I wanted to scream that he was lying, that he was the one who had shamelessly begged my father for my hand in marriage, but I couldn't form a single word. My only hope was my son, Julian. I prayed for him to come and save. As if hearing my silent plea, Julian pushed the door open. A glimmer of hope sparked within me. But in the next moment, he walked slowly toward the mistress and bowed respectfully. "Mother, because of this venomous woman, I could not properly serve you. Today, our family of 3 is finally reunited." He then turned to me, his eyes filled with a vicious hatred. "You barren shrew, you couldn't bear a son, so you stole me. If it weren't for you, the honored title of titled lady would have belonged to my mother. You've occupied her position for too many years. It is time to return it." With that, Julian ordered his men to throw me into the pigsty, leaving me to rot in the filth. Tears of blood streamed from my eyes as I died, consumed by an overwhelming hatred. When I opened my eyes again, I was at the foot of the sacred mountain, my carriage carrying Bria and me back to the Marquise's estate. "My lady, listen. There is a baby crying up ahead." Bria's voice pulled me back to the present. I was reborn. I lifted the curtain. Sure enough, there was an infant lying in the thicket. The carriage stopped, and I emotionlessly had Bria bring the child into the carriage. A hidden figure in the bushes, seeing this, finally departed with peace of mind. I dropped the curtain and closed my eyes in thought. A short while later, I ordered the coachman to change course and head for my family home, the Duke's estate. When my father heard how Alistair had tricked me into raising his illegitimate child, he erupted in fury. "He dares to disregard me. Father will go and beat that bastard to a pulp." He rolled up his sleeves and grabbed a mace, ready to storm Alistair's estate. My mother, equally enraged, picked up a sharpened spear. "Husband, let's split up. You beat that damned Alistair, and I'll go skewer that shameless hussy. To dare humiliate my daughter, they must be tired of living." I grabbed one with each hand, stopping them, and laid out my plan. "I have been married to Alistair for 3 years without a child. If we make a scene, he'll have nothing to lose, and will bring that mistress into the house. Rather than watch that family of 3 flaunt their happiness before me, I'll turn their plot against them. We'll find another abandoned baby to swap this one with. As for this bastard child, we'll send him to a male brothel and let the madam raise him." My father stroked his beard, praising my idea. The decision was made. Mother immediately went to find a suitable infant boy. Bria, meanwhile, took the child to the largest male brothel in the capital. The madam accepted 100 silver taels, grinning from ear to ear, and swore an oath to the heavens. "This boy is fair and tender. In time he will surely become the star of my establishment." With everything arranged, Bria and I finally returned to the Marquise's estate. Alistair rushed out to greet us. Seeing us return empty, handed, his face fell. His eyes widened as he probed. "Ilara, you returned 2 hours late. Did something happen on the road?" "Nothing at all," I replied casually. "The carriage was just a bit bumpy, and I am tired. I'll head back to my room to rest." I brushed him off and started chatting idly with Bria. Alistair, seeing that I wasn't mentioning the baby, broke into a cold sweat and hurried to the stables. Moments later, having gotten the story from the coachman, he came to my chambers. "Ilara, the coachman who took you to the temple said you found a child on the way back. Where is he?" He tried to appear calm, but his slightly trembling fingers betrayed him. "Let's see you squirm," I cursed him inwardly, but my face remained a placid mask. "I sent the child to my parents' home." Alistair's hand tightened on his sleeve. "Why didn't you bring the child back for me to see? How about I accompany you to your parents' home tomorrow morning to see him?" I smiled, deliberately provoking him. "There is no need. I am not feeling well, so I won't be visiting for a few days, and you don't need to see the child. One of my mother's senior maids saw how plump and fair he was and wanted to raise him, so I gave him to her. Hearing that I had given his son to a servant, Alistair felt as if his heart was on fire. How could you just give the child away? What if his birth parents come looking for him? You should ask for him back immediately. I closed my ledger and looked him straight in the eye. My lord, why are you so concerned about a strange infant? My stare made him realize he had lost his composure. He quickly schooled his features back into their usual gentle expression. I am merely worried that if the child's birth parents find us, they'll learn we gave their son to a servant. It would ruin our estate's reputation. I chuckled softly. You worry too much, my lord. There was a letter in the child's swaddling clothes. It said his parents were too poor to raise him, which is why they abandoned him in the mountains. Alistair, terrified his bastard son would suffer in the hands of a servant, pressed on. Ilara, why don't we adopt him? You found him on your way back from the temple. Perhaps he is a gift from the heavens, seeing as we have been childless for so long. I let out a soft sigh. If you wish to raise him, I have no objection. Alistair's tense brow relaxed, and a smile touched his lips, but my next words made his face flush with anger. Unfortunately, the maid has already taken the child to Danzhou. Her own children all work for the southern branch of my family. There, the maid is 50 now, and my mother has given her leave to retire and reunite with her children in Danzhou. Their carriage left the capital hours ago. What? Alistair's voice cracked. Danzhou is so far. How can such a small child endure such a long journey? He was so agitated, he sounded as if he wanted to chase after them on horseback immediately. I was more than happy to oblige. My lord, why don't you ride out of the city now? You might still be able to catch them. With my permission, Alistair bolted out the door without a backward glance. Once he was gone, Bria entered the room. My lady, I've put strong laxatives in the feed for all the horses in the stable. I guarantee he will suffer greatly outside the city. She pictured his fate and let out a little giggle. I couldn't help but join her, laughing until my sides hurt. In his haste, Alistair rode out of the city alone. As he reached the barren hills, the laxatives took effect. The horse began to falter, defecating as it ran. Seeing the horse slow down, Alistair whipped its rump relentlessly. The horse, already in agony from a stomachache, finally bucked, throwing him off. As luck would have it, Alistair flew from the horse and crashed into a large tree, startling a snake coiled on a branch. The provoked snake struck out, biting him. With 2 broken ribs from the impact and a fresh snake bite, he tumbled to the ground, his face landing squarely in a pile of the horse's droppings. The manure filled his face and clogged his nostrils, making it impossible for him to even cry for help. He could only lie there waiting to die. Just as he was on the brink of death, a passing hunter saved him. It just goes to show, a scourge will live 1,000 years. The next day, the hunter brought the injured Alistair back to the estate. I fought to suppress my laughter, gave the hunter 50 silver taels, and had the servants carry Alistair to his bedchamber. That evening Alistair awoke. Every word he spoke sent waves of pain through his body. The physician treating him was my family's doctor. On my orders, he used a special acupuncture technique to amplify Alistair's sense of pain. Even in such agony, he forced himself to speak, begging me to bring the child back. Since I intended to do so anyway, I nodded. I'll send a message for the maid to bring the child back, but the journey to and from Danzhou is long. It will take at least a month. My assurance finally calmed Alistair's anxious heart. I wonder, I thought, if you'll even recognize your own son in a month. I am looking forward to it. A month later, I brought back the abandoned infant my mother's maid had found for me in Danzhou. Alistair, propped up in bed, insisted on holding the child, but I refused, citing his unhealed wounds. He said nothing then, but that night, he dismissed the servants and crept into the nursery. He unwrapped the swaddling clothes to check the baby's foot. Upon seeing a small red mole on the sole, he let out a long breath, a smile gracing his features. Satisfied, he placed the baby back in the cradle and murmured to himself, "My son, you must grow up quickly, use that venomous woman's connections, and seize her dowry so our family of 3 can finally be reunited." Hidden in the shadows, I watched it all. "Let's see how you feel this time," I thought, "when I use your estate's money to raise my son, and you finally learn the truth." Aunt Alistair confirmed the child's identity. He confidently left the boy in my care. Seeing how well I looked after him, he couldn't hide the smug satisfaction in his eyes. One day, I was playing with a rattle to amuse Leo, the name I had given this child. We were having a wonderful time when Bria announced the return of my mother-in-law. She had left 2 months ago, claiming she was going to her private villa in the south of the city to recuperate. But with the memories of my past life, I knew she had gone to look after Alistair's mistress, Clara, through her childbirth. She only returned today, after Clara had completed her month of postpartum confinement. I put down the rattle and went to my mother-in-law's courtyard to pay my respects. As I approached the gate, I heard a shrill voice from within. "Heavens, my jade screen, my spring vase, my celadon porcelain, my jadeite bracelet, my jade ring, my pearl, and gold filigree hairpin, my gilded and jeweled headdress. Where did they all go?" That was my mother-in-law's voice, and the long list of treasures she was rattling off was my dowry. The very first day of my rebirth, I had Bria move my entire dowry back into my private treasury. Seeing me arrive, Alistair shamelessly demanded, "How have you been managing this household? Mother is gone for only 2 months, and all the valuables in her courtyard have vanished. You had better give her an explanation." My eyes were cold as I replied, "I took back my own dowry. What is there to explain? Has your family fallen into such poverty that you must resort to seizing my dowry?" My mother-in-law's eyes were venomous as she pointed at me and shrieked, "What do you mean, your dowry? You are a wife of this family. You married into this family, so your dowry naturally belongs to us. Now, bring all my treasures back immediately, or I won't spare you." I couldn't be bothered to argue with this shameless mother-son duo. I pulled out the token my sister had given me and handed it to Bria. "Go to the capital prefecture and request that Lord Zhao come and seek justice for me. I'd like to see what fate awaits your family for defying the law and seizing a daughter-in-law's dowry." The law stipulated that if a wife's dowry was seized, the authorities would forcibly reclaim the property and administer 30 strokes of the cane. As a court official, Alistair knew this perfectly well. If this blew up, his backside would be blooming with welts. He saw Bria stride out the door and cried out in a panic, "Don't you dare! Get back here this instant!" Bria paid him no mind, and was gone in a flash. Alistair ordered his attendant to chase after her. His mother continued to curse and swear, calling me unfilial and disobedient to my husband, giving Alistair a splitting headache. "That is enough, mother," he roared, startling her into silence. "Aren't there enough treasures in this estate for you? Must you touch Alara's dowry? If word of this gets out, what will become of my reputation?" He then turned to me, his face a mask of guilt. "It was my mistake. I spoke without knowing the full situation. Please, call Bria back. If this becomes a public scandal, it will reflect poorly on you as well, as my wife." Just then, the attendant he had sent out returned in a panic. "My lord, it is terrible." Bria took a horse to the prefecture. I couldn't stop her. Alistair gritted his teeth and slapped the attendant. You useless fool, couldn't you have taken a horse and chased after her? The capital prefect, Lord Zhao, was a busy man, so he sent his deputy Kieran to handle the matter of my mother-in-law seizing my dowry. Kieran was my cousin nicknamed the Megaphone. When Alistair saw who had arrived, his face soured like day-old eggplant. He knew that with Kieran handling this, within a day, my parents, and indeed the entire Liu family clan, would know about his family using my dowry. Alistair forced a smile, attempting to smooth things over with a fine meal and good wine. Kieran shot him a disdainful look, took the dowry list from Bria, and proceeded to march through the estate, inventorying my belongings. This, and this, move it all. An hour later, items I had missed from Alistair's study and his mother's courtyard were all moved to my private treasury. He also gave Alistair a stern warning. My mother-in-law, a former concubine who had clawed her way up, was short-sighted and greedy. Seeing her courtyard stripped bare, she threw a tantrum on the floor, pointing at Kieran and screaming, "You bandit! On what authority do you move my treasures? Put them back. Once these things entered my house, they became mine. What right does an outsider like you have to interfere? Get out," Kieran sneered. "Seizing a daughter-in-law's dowry warrants, 30 strokes of the cane. Insulting a court official warrants 20 slaps to the face. Out of respect for your age, I will allow your son, Alistair, to receive the punishment in your stead." Hearing Alistair was to be punished, his mother puffed out her chest and yelled, "My son is a third-rank marquis. You think you are worthy of punishing him?" I had to suppress a laugh. Ever since the old marquise passed away, the family had been in decline. Alistair had inherited the title, but had achieved nothing. Whenever there was a war, he was the first to claim illness. The emperor was sick of him, often calling him a useless oaf in front of my sister. If the title weren't set to end with his generation, the emperor would have revoked it long ago. Only his mother was blind enough to see the title as some great treasure. Alistair shot me a pleading look, but I pretended not to see, allowing the guards to cane him. When the punishment was over, Alistair's teeth were loose. His face was swollen like a steamed bun, and the wounds on his back had reopened. As he was carried away, he glared at me with pure venom in his eyes. The next day, on my instruction, news of the Alistair family seizing my dowry spread throughout the capital. When my sister heard, she sent 10 carriages of gifts to me and delivered a stern reprimand to both Alistair and his mother. Alistair, fuming but unable to take his anger out on me, could only lie in bed and smash everything within reach. After this incident, Alistair changed his strategy and began treating me with exaggerated kindness. His mother, however, doubled down on tormenting me under the guise of filial piety. One day she would claim to be anemic and demand the precious ginseng pills from my dowry. The next, she would complain of headaches and demand expensive detoxifying pills. If I refused, rumors of my being unfilial would surely spread. So I dutifully gave her the medicine, only I swapped the expensive ginseng pills for cheaper herbal ones, and the rare detoxifying pills for common pearl powder ones. She took them with relish, thinking she had me under her thumb, demanding all sorts of remedies, unaware they were all cheap placebos that wouldn't kill her. As I gave her more, she grew bolder, and even had the audacity to order me to wash her feet. I was the Empress's sister. To wash the feet of this former concubine was the ultimate humiliation. I had had enough. I brought a basin of boiling water into her room, and with a convenient stumble, the entire basin of scalding water splashed onto her. Her piercing scream echoed through the courtyard. While she was recovering, my hand slipped again, and a bowl of medicinal soup poured over her nose and mouth, causing her to cough so violently she nearly coughed up her lungs. After that, she never dared to have me attend to her again. The moment she saw me, she would curse and tell me to get lost. But I wouldn't let her have her way. I continued to serve her morning and night, and within a few years, I had served her right into her grave. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, Leo was 10 years old. Alistair eagerly took him to their countryside villa to meet his mistress. Clara, her face streaked with tears, pulled Leo into a tight embrace. "My son, I am your real mother," she sobbed. "The moment you were born, that barren shrew Alara stole you from me. She used your life to threaten me, forbidding me from ever acknowledging you. I have missed you so much all these years. My heart has been broken. Now we are finally reunited." Alistair wiped away a tear and added his own lies. "Leo, don't blame your father for telling you the truth only now. We were afraid you were too young and might let something slip in front of that evil woman, but now you are 10 and old enough to understand." Leo listened to their performance, then shoved Clara away. "Your story has more holes than a sieve," he said coldly. "Everyone in the capital knows my mother found me, an abandoned infant, at the foot of the sacred mountain. You claim I am your son, so why did you abandon me on a barren hillside?" Clara choked back a sob. "My son, those are all lies that wicked woman made up. I carried you for 10 months. How could I ever bear to abandon you?" Leo's face remained impassive. "Stop right there. You are lying again. Last year my mother took me to the prefecture to see the official records of my case. I was abandoned on a hill. That doesn't match your story of being stolen from your side at all. Besides, I know my mother's character. She would never do something as despicable as stealing another person's child. You, however, father, keeping this woman behind my mother's back. You are truly contemptible." Clara's tears dried up instantly. She beat her fists on Alistair's chest. "That witch Alara has corrupted my son. I told you we should have told him the truth when he was 4. You insisted on waiting until he was 10. Now look, he won't acknowledge me. I might as well be dead." Alistair held Clara, his heart aching for her. He turned to Leo. "Leo, you don't need to worry about the details. All you need to know is that this woman is your biological mother." At this, a crack appeared in Leo's calm demeanor. "I see, you are after my mother's family's power. You deliberately abandoned me so that my mother would find and raise me. You are trying to leech off my mother's family. This is despicable." Crying, Leo ran out. Alistair hurried after him, afraid that Leo would tell me everything when he got back to the estate. On the way home, Alistair repeatedly stressed that he and Clara were Leo's real parents, and that he must not reveal this to me. That night, Leo came down with a high fever. Alistair stayed by his bedside all night, tending to him without rest. This was unusual. Alistair had never taken an interest in caring for Leo before. His sudden diligence made me suspicious. 3 days later, Leo recovered and came to my courtyard under the cover of darkness. He told me everything about Alistair, taking him to meet Clara. With that, Leo passed my final test and truly became my son. It also made me realize what a poor genetic specimen I had raised in my past life. I pulled Leo into my arms and told him the real story of how he had come from Donjo to be with me. After hearing everything, his tears turned to smiles, and his childish innocence returned. Alistair, seeing that all was calm at the estate, smugly assumed Leo had sided with him and Clara. He was so pleased with himself his tail was practically wagging. I pretended not to notice. After all, his real son, Julian, had by now officially begun to receive clients, groveling at the feet of men daily. Just imagining the look on Alistair and Clara's faces when they learned the truth made me glow with excitement. 6 more years passed. Alistair brought home a 14-year-old girl claiming she was the daughter of a distant relative. Her name was Rosalind, and he suggested we adopt her so we would have both a son and a daughter. The girl was beautiful, with a delicate complexion like a hibiscus flower. She was, of course, Alistair and Clara's daughter. In my past life, Alistair had used the same excuse to persuade me to adopt Rosalind as my own. I hadn't agreed then, only raising her as a niece. After she arrived, she was obedient and attentive. Once, during an outing, I was bitten by a venomous snake, and without a second thought, she sucked the poison from the wound, saving my life. Believing her to be kind-hearted, I agreed to adopt her upon our return. But as soon as she became my daughter, she caused a scandal at the Crown Prince's selection ceremony for his consort, forcing the prince to take her. My sister, for my sake, did not punish her and allowed her to become a secondary consort. But Rosalind grew to resent me, blaming me for not helping her secure the position of the primary consort, a position that had already been promised to the Prime Minister's daughter. She seemed to forget how many precious gifts I had to give to appease the Prime Minister's family after she ruined the original ceremony. My thoughts returned to the present. I nodded and agreed to let Rosalind stay, but I stipulated that her adoption would depend on my assessment of her etiquette and upbringing. Alistair beamed with pride. "You can rest assured, Rosalind's upbringing and manners are flawless. It would be a disservice to her to be our daughter. The distant branches of your family are nothing but impoverished freeloaders. Yet you speak so grandly," I retorted coldly. "If you feel it is a disservice, then send her back." Rosalind, who had been looking so proud, turned pale. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked pitifully at Alistair. He was pained to see it, and for once, lost his temper with me. "Ilara, she is just a child. How can you say such hurtful things in front of her?" "I haven't even said the worst of it," I scoffed. "Get her out of my sight. She is an eyesore." I turned and left without another word. After a good cry, Rosalind shamelessly stayed on. The next morning she came to my courtyard to pay her respects. Since she had delivered herself to my doorstep, I decided I might as well put some effort into training her. I had her balance 10 books on her head while standing in the courtyard for 2 hours. She didn't last 15 minutes before she grew dizzy and tried to take the books down. Bria was quick. The moment Rosalind moved, a willow switch lashed her body, making her yelp in pain. "And you call this flawless etiquette? What a joke," Bria chided. "A lady of a noble house wears jewelry to remind herself to maintain her grace and posture. But look at you, your jewelry clinks and clanks when you walk, and you sway your hips like a common strumpet. I don't know who taught you, but you have the manners of a brothel girl." Rosalind's face burned with shame, but with me present, she didn't dare talk back. By the end of the day, she was covered in welts. Alistair stormed into my courtyard, furious. "Ilara, Rosalind has been here for 1 day, and you've beaten her black and blue. Aren't you afraid people will call you a cruel shrew?" I set down my book. "Then send her back where she came from. She is a hopeless case. Can't even stand straight and walks like a slithering snake. Does your family's branch run a brothel to produce such a specimen?" You... Alistair was so enraged he could barely speak. I lost my patience and threw him out. Rosalind, however, was resilient. Despite being beaten yesterday, she returned today, begging for my instruction. I was happy to oblige. We started with her posture, making her stand under the hot sun for an hour at a time. I added cooking lessons, which left her hands covered in blisters. I buried her in classics, history, law, mathematics, poetry. She was getting less than 2 hours of sleep a night, and looked as haggard as a ghost. After 3 months of this frantic, unfocused study, she had accomplished nothing, and her fair skin had turned dark and coarse. I finally told Alistair, "You can't carve rotten wood," and advised him to send her back to her family and find her a husband. This sent both father and daughter into a rage, and they smashed the furniture in their rooms. Let them. Since my rebirth, all household expenses had been paid from the old Marquise's inheritance. Rosalind's whole purpose in coming here was to use me as a stepping stone to the Crown Prince's palace. After 3 months of endurance yielded only my disdain, and with the consort selection approaching, she and Alistair grew desperate. Alistair proposed the same plan from my previous life, inviting me on an outing. I coldly refused. He begged and pleaded in my courtyard for hours until I slapped him twice and sent him away. A few days later, a venomous snake appeared in my room. I had it sent to Alistair's chambers. He was sound asleep when the black snake, flicking its tongue, bit him on the big toe. He had been bitten by a snake once before, and was terrified of them. The sharp pain woke him, and seeing the snake coiled on his foot, he foamed at the mouth, and fainted before he could even scream. By the time the servants found him, the venom had spread. They said he would have to lose his little toe to save his life. I waved my hand and told my physician to amputate his entire lower leg. The pain of the amputation woke Alistair, and he struggled against the procedure. "My lord, you've been poisoned by a deadly snake. If you don't sacrifice your leg, your life is in danger," I pleaded earnestly, but he wouldn't listen. I impatiently poured a packet of muscle, relaxing powder down his throat, forcing him to remain conscious and feel the process of losing his lower leg. By the time Alistair awoke from his stupor, the Prime Minister's daughter had already been named the Crown Prince's primary consort. Rosalind still tried to use my name to sneak into the palace for the selection ceremony. Halfway there, I had men, acting on Alistair's orders, intercept her carriage. They delivered her to the home of Alistair's degenerate friend, Gareth, to become his 13th concubine. As soon as Alistair woke up, I invited Gareth to the estate to catch up. "Alistair, my friend, you are too generous," Gareth boomed, sending me such a beautiful young virgin. A bit of a fiery temper though, and a little crazy, kept insisting she was your daughter. Alistair was bewildered. "What are you talking about? I never sent you any woman." Gareth was equally confused, and recounted the whole story. When Alistair heard the girl's name was Rosalind, he roared for his servants to fetch her. A servant replied, "My lord, Miss Rosalind left the estate while you were unconscious, and has not yet returned." Arg! Alistair let out a primal scream, coughed up a mouthful of blood and fainted. Gareth, splattered with blood, cursed his bad luck and stormed out. When Alistair came to, he hobbled to my courtyard on a crutch. "You venomous woman, what did you do while I was unconscious? Why is Rosalind that scoundrel Gareth's concubine?" He glared at me, demanding an explanation. I raised an eyebrow. "If you are so curious, you can go to Gareth's estate and ask Rosalind yourself." Alistair's jaw clenched. After 2 lives, I knew him better than anyone. Now that Rosalind's purity was gone, she was useless to him. This was just a show to see if I knew about his mistress and Leo's true identity. As expected, seeing no further reaction from me, he shot me a venomous look and left. The next day, he took 1,000 silver taels to Gareth's estate. Rosalind was abandoned. From there Alistair went to the Royal Academy. "Leo, your sister was framed by that wicked woman and is now a concubine. You must study hard and use the Liu family's power to rise quickly, so you can avenge her. And this leg of mine, I lost it because of her as well. I can't wait another moment. I want to kill her now, but for the sake of your future, I must endure." Leo nodded impassively, reassured. Alistair left. Clara, not having seen her daughter for a long time, grew anxious. She sent message after message to Alistair, demanding to see Rosalind, now a cripple with a daughter for a concubine. Alistair tried to hide the truth, telling Clara to be patient. Realizing something was wrong, Clara threatened to storm the Marquise's estate if he didn't bring her daughter to her. Finally admitting he couldn't hide it any longer, Alistair went to see her. Clara stroked his empty trouser leg and wailed, unable to believe her own schemes had harmed the man she loved. As her sobs subsided, she asked why she hadn't heard news of Rosalind entering the Crown Prince's palace. Alistair grimly told her the truth. When Clara learned that her precious daughter was now a concubine to the womanizer Gareth, she fainted into Alistair's arms. He comforted her, and soon his comfort moved from words to the bed. "Clara, my love, don't be sad. We can have another child." Clara feigned resistance, then giggled as she shed her clothes. But Alistair's passion fizzled out in moments. Embarrassed, he coughed and claimed his injuries hadn't fully healed. He returned to the estate defeated and immediately sent a servant to buy aphrodisiacs. Half a month later, feeling he had recovered, he went to a brothel to test himself. Under the guidance of a coachman I had arranged, Alistair ended up at the male brothel where his son Julian worked. He had just entered the main hall when he saw a patron forcing a young man down. Curious, Alistair approached. The young man on the bottom bore a striking resemblance to Clara. Shocked, Alistair lunged forward and pulled off the young man's shoe. The young man thought Alistair wanted to join in. "Sir," he cooed, holding out a hand, "it will be 1 silver tael to have your fun with me." The patron, angry that his purchase was already soliciting another customer, slapped him twice. "I paid for you, so pay attention to me." Alistair ignored them, desperately examining the young man's foot. When he saw the distinct red mole, he roared in disbelief. "Impossible! It can't be!" He scrambled out of the brothel and ordered the coachman to take him to the Royal Academy. Half an hour later, they arrived. Leo was just finishing his classes and joined Alistair in the carriage. With a trembling heart, Alistair checked Leo's feet. They were perfectly clear. Alistair's world collapsed. "How can this be?" He howled. "You are not my son. Tell me, whose bastard are you?" Leo quickly put on his shoes and jumped out of the carriage. "I am the son of Alara. What have I to do with you?" He scoffed, then turned and ran back into the academy. His face contorted with rage, Alistair ordered the coachman back to the male brothel and bought Julian's freedom. A bewildered Julian followed Alistair out. On the way back, Julian, assuming Alistair was a patron, used all his wiles to seduce him. Alistair shoved him away, and in a voice choked with grief, told him the truth. When Julian learned he was the true heir of a marquis, but had been cast into a house of pleasure for over a decade by the lady of the house, he wanted to kill me on the spot. Alistair quickly used the power of my family to restrain him. "The priority now is to reclaim your status as the rightful heir. As for that venomous woman, once you are successful, killing her will be a simple matter." Julian's eyes were bloodshot, but he listened, deciding to bide his time. The two of them arrived at the estate and stormed directly into my courtyard. "Ilara, this young man is my savior. Tomorrow I will open the ancestral hall and register him under our names as our legitimate son. As for that ungrateful brat Leo, he has no fate with me. We will cast him out tomorrow." I hurled a teacup at Alistair's head. "A filthy thing ridden by 1,000 men is worthy of being my son. Alistair, you may have no shame, but I do." Alistair's face turned ashen. Julian, enraged, lunged at me with a raised fist. I stood and kicked him, sending him flying. Still not satisfied, I added salt to Alistair's wounds. Did you know that this savior you've brought back is a eunuch? Alistair's lips trembled as he stared at Julian in horror. You are a eunuch. Struck at his core, Julian scrambled up and charged at me again. A guard swung a staff, knocking him to the ground. Drag him away and lock him in the pigsty, I commanded. The guards mercilessly dragged Julian to the pigsty I had specially prepared for him. Alistair stared at my sharp, cold eyes. Even a fool would know by now that I was responsible for Julian ending up in that brothel. Still, he asked, "My lady, do you hold a grudge against that young man?" I sneered, my gaze filled with contempt. "I have already sent guards to the countryside villa to fetch your mistress. You can have a proper family reunion. Oh, wait, it should be a family of 4, but the other one is at Gareth's estate. I won't bother fetching her." My words shattered Alistair's last sliver of hope. Clara was overjoyed for the entire carriage ride into the city. She thought the guards were sent by Alistair to bring her to the estate, to live a life of luxury. It was only when they brought her to a remote courtyard that she realized something was wrong. The guards caught her as she tried to flee and kicked her into the pigsty. She landed in the filth and saw Alistair there, along with a strange young man. She scrambled to Alistair's side. "My lord, what is happening?" Alistair had already been paralyzed by my physician. His face was twisted, and he could barely speak. Clara turned pleadingly to Julian. "Sir, what is going on?" Julian had been dreaming of a life of luxury, only to be thrown into a pigsty. He was a powder keg of rage, and Clara had just lit the fuse. Smack, smack. He slapped her twice across the face. "This was your brilliant idea, wasn't it? Leaving me on a hill, making me suffer for 16 years. I'll kill you." Alistair watched his wife and son tear each other apart. He tried to tell them to stop, but his voice was as weak as a mosquito's buzz. After locking the 3 of them in the pigsty, I announced that Alistair had been paralyzed and resigned from his official post on his behalf. The clan elders were suspicious and wanted to visit, but my father suppressed their inquiries. 2 years later, Leo passed the imperial examinations with flying colors, becoming the 2nd highest scholar in the land and securing a prestigious position in the Hanlon Academy. His future was boundless. After Leo's success, the clan elders completely forgot about Alistair. His family of 3 was doomed to live out their days in the pigsty. On the day of Leo's celebration banquet, Bria whispered in my ear that Julian had gone mad and was screaming for me, calling me mother. A faint smile touched my lips as I sipped my wine. A wave of pure, unadulterated pleasure washed over me. Let that white-eyed wolf experience the suffering I endured in my past life.